Okay, so welcome everyone. Today we're going to be doing a podcast episode for Four Corners. I'm here today with Emma. You want to introduce yourself?
I'm Emma, I'm 20, and I'm here with Cameron.
We're actually both from Rosemere, so it's really nice that we're both, young women in the Laurentians area. So this topic today is really good for us to talk about because we can relate to most of the questions and the topics. So for the overall topic, it's going to be about navigating the youth and different challenges and opportunities for people living in the Laurentians. So the first question I just want to ask you, you can kind of answer it directly or go around it if you don't really have an answer.
All right,
The first question is, can you share your personal experiences growing up in the Laurentians area?
Honestly, growing up in the Laurentians area, I'd say the fact of a little more on the fact of the mental health. So trying to access resources and stuff, depending on either the financial or not. Given that, it's like it's always harder to find like the English aspect.
I
And
totally
then
agree.
it's like very less. So then already trying to find that and trying to find one in range, it makes more of a difficulty
Yeah.
than actually being able to access it properly, or like the waiting time and everything.
Yeah, I
It's
agree.
ridiculous.
It's kind of like when you need a doctor's appointment, it's like you can't get one when you need one. So I feel like
That's if you even have one.
exactly. So I feel like that's the same kind of thing like when dealing with mental health, if you can't actually find what you need in that time, it's kind of like it's not useless, but it's an extra, struggle that people can go through because they can't get the needs that they want, and a lot of them just end up giving up. So I understand that can be
I can name some people. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. It's a big struggle for sure. And how do you think the community has shaped you overall? So either like Rosemere or Laurentians overall?
Um, Honestly, I think I could go with the fact of growing up, I guess, more in elementary. There wasn't much shaping of the fact that it was harder to get access even in like the elementary schools. But going to high school, the resources there was a little better because now at around like the age of like 14, you're actually able to speak up for yourself. So then it was a little easier to actually access a bit of resources, but it was still to get the actual attention and the proper resources to find them.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like now it's better. Like when I was in high school too, it wasn't really spoken about enough where it's like, okay, if you need help, come to our office or come speak to someone, we can help you. I think now it's improved. I have people I know that are still in high school at Rosemary High School.
Yeah,
So
same.
yeah. So I think it has gotten better. I think like the downside is that there's more people now that are in need help as well, or people now are actually speaking up, which is the good side obviously. But yeah, you'll see posters now, saying like if you need to speak to someone, you can come talk to us or whatever. So I think that's good. But like even just 5 years ago, there was not really anything. So a lot of people that were in need didn't really know what to do. Like at 14, you're so young. So yeah, it's good that now I think they've improved with that. So
No, that's true. I mean, when I was younger, it was hard to even realize that there was resources, and even now, I think mental health has come more into the picture, that people are acknowledging it more. But I think it's not fully processed, and people don't fully understand it. That it's still seen more as we're using it as a crutch.
yeah, yeah.
And then at that point, it's like, okay, well, you're just over exaggerating. You don't need the help, or then like it's seen so big that like it just tends to be okay, fine. Well, if you need help, and then it's like the help is not there,
Yeah,
or you're just like pushed into it, and it's like, okay, but that's not the type of help, and there's like different directions, and maybe it's not the proper one.
yeah, exactly. And like mental health is seen in every different aspect. So like your personal life, but also work life too. There's some people that are like workaholics and they don't even know that they need help. But, it's affecting their life, or they see it from the outside and they're like, okay, this behavior is not normal. So there's mental health and you need help around that in all the different aspects, whether it's like school or whether it's your career, or even if you're older and you're just alone at home. Like there's so many different stages where you can get help, and it should be seen as something like normal and not like this big thing like, oh my God, you need help. And yeah, so I totally agree.
No, well, in the past, it's because it was more swept under the rug than now. So now, from the older generations looking, it's like they don't realize it because it was always swept under the rug. It was, okay, it's only in your head.
And
Doesn't matter.
they never spoke about it. And like,
Exactly.
they're like, well, if we didn't have to go through it, like,
And
why is it a
now
thing
it's the
now?
comprehension, trying to understand what the heck is actually going on and why there's so much of a dilemma going on with it.
Yeah, exactly. But they for sure would have needed some help
Oh, yeah.
back in the day as well.
I'll
They
agree
just
on that.
didn't understand. So how has the cultural diversity in the Laurentians influenced the youth and their perspective on life, you think?
I'm not sure how to answer that, honestly.
Okay. Do you think there is like a good culture around here in the Laurentians? Do you think the different cultures have impacted you in a way, or anything you can think of? Or you think there's no culture, like, for example, going to school?
There definitely is, but it really depends the area, and can't really tell if I had an influence on that or not.
Yeah, okay.
I was influenced personally.
Yeah, that's fine. Sometimes it's hard to know yes or no if you haven't seen it or even experienced it. Yeah. So that's okay. Do you think there are any notable youth-led initiatives or projects in the Laurentians that address local challenges around here that you can think of?
I've heard a few. Can I recall the names? Maybe not. But
other than Four Corners, obviously.
That's the main one I'll mention for sure. I could think by the top of my head of some.
Or do you think like there's enough around here? Do you think there
not
should
enough.
Be more? Yeah, okay.
Or at least not enough that's known to the public. Mm-hmm. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I think
there's a lack, or even I think in schools is the biggest one, because students and youth go to school every single day. So that's the place where they're most comfortable, or I shouldn't really say that because they have homes as well. But I mean, like, they go to school every single day. So that's somewhere where they're familiar with. They get to see the same people all the time. So if there was more projects or different, initiatives implemented in schools, I think it would be a good place. Because like you said, there could be, but people might not know about them, or there might not be enough awareness about them. So
I was going to say maybe also being able to get like the students or even like the teenagers to actually want to participate is a big step also.
Yeah, for sure.
Because depending on what it is, you have a lot that are like influenced by one another, and it's like, oh, if I do this, then I'm going to be judged on it.
I know there's, the friends influence and the other people, like the outsiders, the opinions is really big. So
then it depends on the people.
Yeah, I know. It's a touchy subject. Yeah. Another question I can have. So what unique challenges do you think people in the Laurentians face compared to others in Montreal? Do you think there's a difference? Do you think there's a specific challenges just around here? What could you say?
Well, challenges, I think overall general, there's definitely the mental health. Mm-hmm. I would say there's a lot of different aspects from homelessness and everything else.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Especially depending on like the area. I've seen here and there, and it's quite sad. I think there's so many different challenges that it's impossible to actually think of all of them.
I know, the list could go on forever.
Yeah. I think it's honestly underseen. People just kind of walk with their heads up instead of looking at everything around, and it's just
taking those problems
oblivious.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I agree. Well, the homeless is really a big one, and it's like, it's crazy the younger people now that you can see homeless as well. I know in another province in Canada, the homeless is a really big issue, and even like the housing issue. People can't afford to move out. People can't afford to buy their food. And it's not like they have bad jobs. Like, they have normal careers, and they're like struggling to live. So,
well, it's because, to what I know, or at least I've heard, we're actually being only, the economic rate has went up, I think, 60 to 70%. And the wages have only went up 15% from like the 1950s. So there's no way of living.
The ratio it's not equal for sure.
No. Yeah. And then that's why we struggle. Then it's getting the access to the resources.
And then after
there's too much demand.
Yeah. And then it's just like a cycle that never ends. And it's like, when is it going to end? And when is it ever going to improve, right? Like,
then either there's not enough workers, or the workers are over like stressed, and it just doesn't work. It's an ongoing cycle.
No, exactly. Totally agree. How do you think technology has impacted the lives of the youth in the Laurentians? And what role does it play in their daily life and experience, do you think?
There's many ways I could go on that.
It could be like
there's
positive.
A good and there's positive and negative to that.
Yeah.
I think the positive is actually being able to communicate more with people and getting to like connect with people. For example, you're able to contact your grandmother or grandparents or whatever. It's easier. But then if you want to look at the negative, it's more of the fact of you could get cyberbullying. Mm-hmm. You could have the fact of there's less communication because people will just sit down with their phones in their hands and it's not even talking. You'll go to a dinner, you'll look at the table beside, and you'll have like majority of the table just on their phones.
Yeah, exactly. Or even
like
like
gone.
you see children that are like even 7 or 8 years old,
4 years old too,
at a family dinner, and they have the iPad, and I'm like, no,
that's
like
where the iPad kids come in.
Yeah, like I feel like I would never do that when I have kids, like unless there's, you know, it's their birthday and they want to have their iPad or whatever it is. But like just if you're with family or whatever, like you shouldn't have your iPad or your technology there. You can go home. Like there's a time and place for that. Exactly. And also it's going to impact their way to communicate later on, the way to speak, their anxiety. Like maybe they don't even have anxiety, but now it's going to become something.
But I think that's what also leads to anxiety now too. Exactly. Of like the social awkwardness and communication. It's not there anymore. No, if you look at like 1990s without like all the communication, you could see people actually communicating.
People went out, people spoke to each other, the kids interacted with each other, and now it's like, you know, they have that at recess, but once they go home or they go out in a social event, it's like, are they going to be just attached to, you know, themselves or their parents?
80% is on their electronics. That's a given.
Yeah, for sure. And even in schools, I know some high schools have tried to take away the phones.
Well, RHS has. I think it's been 2 years now.
Yeah.
Apparently they see more of a difference, but it's still a struggle.
Yeah, but yeah. So apparently it worked. Some people said it worked and some people said it didn't.
It's a half and half.
Of course, it's high school. Kids won't always listen. Like we all know that. So like it's really hard to kind of take the technology and take it away because it's like in everyone's life and everyone like uses it. And some students are like, well, if something happens, I need to contact my mom. And there's always an excuse. So there's always people that are not going to listen. But I think just like if people knew the time and the place to use their technology and if they're going to use it in the right way, it's good. It can be super beneficial, like you were saying, speaking with people that, you know, might be across the world, or like if they have someone, their best friend that they're really close to and they feel comfortable speaking with that person and the only way they can is through FaceTime or whatever, that's perfect. But also the technology, like you said, like the bullying or the people hiding behind the screens.
Exactly.
Like it's a dark place too, you know, so
I think if you have also the access, I'd say, to being able to reach different resources too on there.
Yeah,
which comes up, which that is beneficial, but it's also being able to find it.
Exactly, and getting something that's actually credible and it's a good source. Sometimes people are consuming, you know, content that's not even true. So it could go on forever and ever. But as long as you have a balance and you know, and you're, you know what you're doing is good, then I think it's okay. But yeah, it's definitely a positive and a negative impact on the people here. Yeah, I guess so. We both speak English, right? So in high school, did you feel like you kind of were left out, or was it hard fitting in, knowing that you spoke English and having other people around you speaking French, or even in your classes and stuff? Do you think it was like hard for you?
Actually, honestly, I've been dealing with that since even elementary.
Okay, yeah. It goes back, true.
Yeah, it goes back. Even elementary. I mean, even though the fact that I understood, it goes a lot on the bullying aspect too.
Yeah.
I was picked on a lot for that because I was more behind. Mm-hmm. And I can even just think of an experience back in grade 6 it was. I was like with my friends and they're like, oh, we want to talk. But they wanted to talk in French, so I didn't understand. So my friend knew I understood, but it was like, oh, well, she doesn't understand French. So they all started laughing at me. They're like, okay, well, she could come. She doesn't understand French. I was like,
no, I know. It's
ridiculous.
It's like to make fun of someone for the language they speak. It's like, that's something, first of all, they can't even control. Like if they are from a certain province or wherever they're from, and that's the language they, you know, were speaking, like their mother tongue, like you can't really make fun of that. It's not something, like, of course, you're living in Quebec, you probably want to know how to speak French. It's probably something you're working on. But if you're still struggling on and still learning the language, like, you don't have to make fun of me, you know? Like, it's something.
No, that's exactly. I mean, even high school was the same thing. It was depending the crowd, depending who it is. It's like, okay. Then it's like, do you trust the people that you want to speak French or comfortable to even ask for help without being like bullied or picked on because you're like, oh, am I comfortable enough? Is this person actually going to judge me or not?
No, I know. It's really hard. I went through the same thing. So I moved here when I was in secondary too. So learning French at the age of like 16 or 15 or whatever, how old you are in Sec 2, it's super hard. Like even the French classes, I was like, oh my God, how am I going to do like the tests and the exams? I'm like, no. It would give me so much anxiety, and like the teacher would speak so fast, and I'm like, I spoke to her after and I said, like, this is my situation, like, just letting you know, like, I am not from here. It's my first like summer living here. But it was like, I remember, super hard. And the only way you can really practice is to learn the language is by practicing. But when you're shy, it's super hard to obviously practice unless you're like alone or whatever. But
even then,
it's like, how do you know if you're doing it right or not, you know? So like learning a language like in school and in your classes is one thing, but actually learning how to speak is another. Because I know people who are full on French and know the language very well.
They struggle.
Exactly. They struggled in school because of the exams were all about the verbs and the tenses and the past tense and all that.
We started on that.
And that's something that they didn't even understand. And I'm like, okay, so how am I going to even know how to do that? It was all about memorization for the test. I remember it wasn't even about learning at that point because I'm like, okay, I just need to get this grade or else I'm not going to pass and whatever.
Yeah.
So I focused on learning like the language just at home and like outside in the world. But I remember the struggle.
I mean, I've understood since I was younger, but speaking, it's only been like 3 years when I started actually working. Mm-hmm. And even then, I started difficulties. I had customers complaining, trying to correct me, getting mad at me.
Oh my God, I know.
Oh, I'm like, okay, like, sorry, of like, I'm trying, and then the verbs and everything. I'm like,
no, I know. And like, in order to learn it, you have to practice. And of course, you're going to make mistakes. Like, I hear people that are French speaking English, and if they make mistakes, I'm not going to just start criticizing them. Like, they're trying. So, you know, obviously you
give it a chance.
Yeah, give it a chance, and like you don't have to, you know, be rude to someone because of that, you know. So you can totally agree on the French and how it was not easy in high school or in elementary.
French isn't an easy language to begin with.
No, it's really not.
To start with is not easy.
Especially written, I find. French speaking, you can kind of get away with different, you know, your accent.
Because it's not exactly the same as writing.
Exactly, and you can kind of
reading.
Yeah, you can, you know, smudge some words together and like whatever, but writing, it can be very difficult. Like, there's so many apps out there for like correcting French, and it's like, how do you know if your thing is right? Like, it's
you don't know.
No, that's why
I don't think there's even a proper way directly. There's so many ways to go about it.
Yeah, and there's some words that you can know, when you go in the translator, it has like 4 options for you, and I'm like, okay, but is there one that's correct? Is there one that doesn't?
Which is the right one?
Yeah. So yeah, French, we're learning every day. That's what I could say.
Yeah,
and it's
even for people here, I think it's just a struggle in general for people to like talk, communicate.
And that's why it's nice when you meet someone that is English, because then you guys can kind of like relate, and you can say, oh my gosh, okay, I'm with someone who understands, and I'm not, you know, have to be stressed and everything. So.
True. If not, I like the fact of even at one of my jobs of I'm able to communicate with one of my coworkers. She's like fully French.
Okay.
But just the communication boundary of at least she understands English. So it's like I can feel comfortable speaking English and she speaks French, but like we're still able to understand each other.
You can have chemistry with someone just by like their presence. Like if they're a nice person and they understand, okay, this person is still learning the language, like it's amazing how you guys can communicate, you know, like.
Well, that's exactly. Or even just help one another, try learning each other's language properly.
Like I know people, like I don't know them, but on social media, there's one girl who is English and her boyfriend is Spanish, and they get along and they obviously make it work. They're together, right? So it just goes to show you, if, you know, there's someone there that's accepting of your language and you trying to learn, like it can work, you know? So
it's really trying to understand one another. But once again, that goes into communicating with others, being able to socialize.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of like work and background that comes into it. So
yeah. Well, then we could go with the cultural aspect, too, that you were bringing in earlier.
Yeah, exactly. And also,
cultures.
like, where you're from. So if you're, you know, brought up in a family where, you know, they taught you to be nice to everybody, to be inclusive, you know, to make friends with other people that don't look like you, that don't speak like you, that
compared
kind of...
to others
that
judge.
I feel like it kind of totally adds and shapes who you are, like, as you get older and everything.
Well, it definitely does.
So, yeah.
So, Cam, I wonder, how was your experience when you first started, when you came to Canada? Montreal area?
Yeah, so I was living in Nova Scotia before, so I was really just a change of province, but obviously Quebec, my parents and my family warned me, like, it is French. I was going to English high school, like we like we mentioned before, but I was like honestly really nervous because I was like, okay, this is a change from my entire life, you know, like I was growing up in Nova Scotia, so I had all my friends, I had, you know, done school there, all in English. English was the only language I knew.
Okay, so there was no other language.
No,
really?
So Nova Scotia is really just English. It's not like New Brunswick where it's bilingual, French and English like combined. It's really just English. So when I found out that we were moving to Quebec, I was like, okay, this is gonna be like, I was excited because it's like, oh, your parents telling you you're gonna move, like it's fun, a new house, whatever. Like it's fun, but it's a lot of emotions, and it's like really scary too. So knowing that you're going to high school, like high school in general for every teen is like a big thing.
It's a big step.
But going to high school in another province with no one that you know, a new language. So I was like really freaking out. I moved the summer before school started. So like school starts in like September, August or whatever. So we moved in like, I don't know, end of May or whatever it was. So I had time to kind of like meet people. I hung out with my cousin a lot because we have family here. So that was good. That helped me a lot. But I was like not really knowing what to expect. I knew it was going to be a challenge, like friends, the schooling, like even the grading, like how do people grade here? What is the, academic level? Like, are people, like, is it the same? Like, there's so many questions that you have. But I knew like the French was really going to be something that like
Did you have any idea of what French was and how to speak it or understood it in a certain sense?
Yes, because my parents are from here, so they're both completely bilingual, so that was good in a way. But like I said, like we never really spoke French at home, so like they helped me a bit, but it wasn't something I knew. Like I knew like maybe a few colors and that was it, and like hi, like I didn't really know how to speak or how to write an essay or how to like analyze a story in French, like all these things that you do in school. So it was like a really big challenge. And the first day I looked at my schedule and my first class on the Monday was French, and I was like, ooh, what a great start. I was like, okay. And I had a lot of nice friends in my class. A lot of people were really sweet and like asked me to come sit with them, so like that was really good. And those people are still like my friends today, so that's really cute.
Good teachers too.
Yeah, my teachers were nice, but they were just like, okay, school's starting again, nothing different. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And they were going over like the course outline and, all the exams. And I'm like, I left there and I don't even remember like what I did. Like, it was like a blank to me. I was like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? So I don't know. The French, like I knew it was going to be a challenge, and it was a challenge, but I got through it. That's okay.
There you go.
And now like I speak French, and I'm, still learning though. There's some words that I'll be like, I don't know what that is, or like the professional term. So yeah, it was definitely a challenge, and I wasn't really prepared for it because there's no way to prepare. You can't just say, okay, I'm going to start learning French and be ready. Like it doesn't take a week. It takes like years, and it takes practice, and it takes confidence, and it takes all these things. So yeah, that's what I can say about that.
No, understandable. But even just like the fact of understanding and like knowing that you can't just learn a language in a few months, brings even the people that are trying to move into the country of now they have the restriction of having to communicate in 6 months to be able to actually move in. Like that's a big difficulty also.
Yeah, I know now there's like a lot of different laws too, even with the CEGEPs. When I went into Vanier, there was no exam that you had to do in French. There was no requirements for that. But I know now that there is like a certain test you have to take in French.
Yeah, I think it was just passed with the new bill or something.
Yes.
But like, so that causes more difficulties also. Yeah,
and students, they have to focus on so many different things already, and then learning a language or the pressure of passing just to get accepted into like, a school or a college or university or whatever. It's just like so much more added to like your mental capacity. So yeah, I remember like I was happy I didn't have to go through that, but thinking now I'm like, it's so not fair for these people. Like people are coming around Quebec from all different provinces, countries, and it's like, okay, you're expected to know, and the tests are not easy. It's not like, okay, write a paragraph about yourself and you can kind of like, make your way. It's like, no, it's a high level type of.
Like even French people say how it's difficult. Yeah. So imagine someone that's actually French and struggles.
Yeah.
Don't expect someone that doesn't understand and doesn't speak to actually be able to even pass it.
Yeah, exactly. People try really hard, and if they can't get it, like it's, some people are seeing, oh, okay, they failed. Like, no, it's not a fail. Like, they're just still trying. Like, give them a chance,
just more time.
Yeah. For sure.
And how would you say the fact of learning French in the language would impact having to find a job or even your goal, like in the future of your career path?
Yeah, that's a really good one. I think it honestly depends what you want to do. If you want to work a corporate job, if you want to work in the healthcare system, if you want to work for the government, I feel like that kind of changes. Like, for example, I work for a company and we're based in Laval, and the founders are English, and it's an English company. So yes, we're in Quebec and we have all of our legal paperwork. All of that is in French because we do follow the laws. Obviously, it's a company. But I'm very blessed that when we're in office and when we do our meetings, everything internal, we get to speak English. Sometimes we do speak French, like with our French clients or whatever. So I was lucky with that. But honestly, I think if you have a basic understanding of the French and you're able to kind of communicate, or you're able just to even do your interview in French, because I know in Quebec, in an interview, people will ask you at least one question in French, or they'll try to see if you know a few terms, or if you know a little bit of information in the industry that you're applying for in French. I think that can like really add to it. But there's a lot of founders and a lot of managers or bosses or whatever that are really accepting of that. And if you're able to do, let's just say you're a graphic designer, like, is French super important for that? Not really.
No,
as long as you can design and you can do whatever your role is, boom. Like, if I was a manager, I would say, okay, I'm gonna hire you. That's fine. Like, if you pass all the tests, that's okay. But then if you're someone who's interacting with clients or people every day, maybe that will become more important, and maybe you'll get the required training to kind of learn the terms that that company uses on the daily. Like, there's different things. So I think if you know what industry you want to go into, if you know what career or where you want to work, you can kind of like navigate yourself and prepare yourself for it. But it definitely changes, I think, on the different job and the industry for sure.
So depending on where you go. Yeah. I'll definitely agree on that.
Yeah. But nowadays, like, there's so many tools also online that you can use to help you. Like, if you're writing an email, you don't have to, you can use a translator, you can use an editor. There's a lot of tools out there that you can use. Like, back in the day, I think that would have been a really big struggle. Like, no one had these resources to help them.
True.
So, yeah, I think if you're surrounded by good people that support you, that they're to help you, that give you the resources to, succeed in the language and to write, whatever you need to do, I think it's good. So choose wisely where you want to put yourself.
I'll agree with that.
Yeah. So it was really nice to get to speak to you today and just, cover the topics of mental health, the language barrier, issues with school. And it was really cool how we could relate coming from the same high school. So that was really nice. So yeah, thank you guys for listening to this episode today. Make sure you follow Four Corners on all the social media platforms to keep up with all the news and what's going on in the community. And also don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel to get all the podcast episodes. And yeah, thank you for watching.
Thank you.